SF Live, episode 28, a special doubleheader this Monday, May 11th. I'm joined by Terry Harbort. He's the president and CEO of Talisker Resources. But before we switch over to Terry, just quickly be reminded, this is an interactive format. Make sure to use hashtag AskTSK, the company's ticker, for your questions here on Twitter. That way, we'll get to those questions at the end of our interview, a quick chat I'm going to have with Terry here in a second. Also, make sure you follow us, subscribe to Twitter here, hit the alert button. That way, you always get alerts when we go live. Also, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and also Instagram. Spotify is an interesting way to listen to our podcasts or live video podcasts while you're on the road. So we're going to switch over to Terry now. He's joining us from Australia. And Terry, welcome to the show. How are you doing? How are things?
Afternoon, Kai. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Where in Australia are you right now?
In a place called Karoi, which is about an hour and 15 minutes north of Brisbane, the capital of Queensland.
Oh, and you've been stranded there. We just had a couple of minutes before we went live here, but you've been stranded here after a marketing trip. So tell us, how has Corona affected you, and how is the day-to-day going from Australia?
Honestly, it hasn't really affected us that much at all. Obviously, we're fairly attuned to working from remote offices. I'm based in Vancouver, but I don't share an office with my CFO or my corporate secretary. They're in other places. Our corporate secretary works from home. All of our guys are based in Vancouver. The guys up in Bralorne. So everybody's remote. So it hasn't really changed anything for us at all. On a marketing front, we just have to be more diligent and do more calls and video conferences as opposed to lunches and things like that. So really, it hasn't made a big difference to us, simply because in exploration we're really used to operating under these conditions.
Yeah, that's true. Working remotely anyway, and the life of the CEO half the time is on the road anyway. So
exactly right. And actually, it has been a real pleasure without having any flights. I'm just not in my home. I'm somewhere else.
Don't show us a photo of the beach or something, okay? Please don't.
No, it's awful here, everyone. It's terrible.
No, but being based in Australia, how is it affecting your calls? Like, what time is it now? It's 1 o'clock PST here, so Pacific. What time you got now?
It's 6 a.m. here. Usually I start my day about 4 a.m. I schedule my marketing calls first, and then sort of after 5 o'clock, the marketing drops off, and then I speak to all my Toronto people. And then when their day finishes, I focus on the BC people. So sort of about 3 in the afternoon, I start talking to the geologists, and all of our geologists are working from home at the moment. You would have noticed a release on suspension of operations there in BC. So all of our geos are working on bringing all the historic data in from the project. So I sort of catch up with them later on in the day, and everybody works a bit later so they can communicate with me. So it works fine.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great. Let's start diving into Bralorne. It's the new flagship asset to a degree, and you got Spences Ridge as well, and we're going to talk about it too. But Bralorne at first, you suspended drilling. You got a lot of data to go through. So catch us up on what you're doing at Bralorne right now.
So we suspended drilling basically when the COVID crisis really came to a head. We made the decision to suspend drilling for a number of reasons. First and foremost, to protect the health and safety of our own staff, but also and very importantly to protect the health and safety of the communities that we work in. Bralorne itself and also Lillooet, which is the main service town, are very small communities. We have a very large Indigenous population in Lillooet itself, and several working at the mine. There were some major concerns in those communities because they're looking after their own healthcare. That in a fly out scenario, many of our people are on 2 and 2. That there'd be a large possibility of bringing the virus into town and affecting their ability to deal with the crisis. So we made that decision after consultation with the local communities and the First Nations, and made the decision that it's really the right thing to do. Luckily for us, it paralleled to our planned shutdown. So we had a planned shutdown because of the fresh set, dealing with extra melt and mud and sloppy conditions. So in general, we shut down the drilling in early spring anyway. So we were very fortunate that we were able to parallel our shutdown with that melt. We're in constant negotiations with the local communities. We've been able to donate some funds to assist with food banks and with some healthcare there locally. We expect that we'll be able to kick off drilling again in Bralorne within the next couple of weeks. We're already starting to mobilise and come back in now that things have calmed down in British Columbia. And the reality is it hasn't really affected our timeline. We might be 2 weeks behind our timeline, but it also gave us some other opportunities to retask our geologists to focus on bringing a lot of this historic vein data into a digital format, start to bring in all the structural information that's related to that data into Leapfrog and 3D digital. And also to complete our dewatering study on the project. We're nearing an end on that. Now we have a very good idea of what will be required to initiate that dewatering and give us access to underground.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so how many meters have you drilled so far at Bralorne, and the results that came out? Give us a more idea, a better understanding of that situation.
So we've completed the first 5 holes. Of those first 5 holes, we've received assays back for the first 2 holes. Now, obviously, the laboratory isn't immune from COVID restrictions and reductions in staff, so that's why things have been a bit delayed there. We expect we'll get hole 3 and 4 out within the next couple of weeks, and we got about halfway through hole 5, so about 500 meters through hole 5. We cemented hole 5 so we can easily enter back down and continue that hole. We've got some quite good targets at depth. We hit in hole 5, as we have in the other holes, several previously unidentified veins. So that's very interesting for us. Extra veins that are outside the original 63 that were identified. The results that came back were fairly well what we expected. There weren't any surprises there. Our targeting for those holes wasn't the best holes, wasn't the best veins or the widest veins or highest grade. They were the veins that were closest to surface. So our targeting for the first 4 veins was just to make sure that our coordinate algorithm, converting from mine grid in feet and inches into meters and UTM, was correct before we ramp up our drilling and start doing a lot more. Okay. So that worked out very well and confirmed that. The grades and the widths we got, the average was about 90 centimeters. That's a historic average for the veins of the 4 million ounces that was mined. So it was fairly well what we expected, and the range of grades was fairly well what we expected. The interesting thing
it was around 30 grams, 32 grams, right? So
yes, we had some higher hits, a 27 and a 32, bit over 32, and we had some wider veins as well, up to 1.5 meters. But yeah, the results came back very good and what we're expecting. So we're very happy with that.
Fantastic, because the share price hasn't reacted to it at all. Like, yeah, you're actually one of the few stocks on my watch list, and I own Talisker. Full disclaimer here. I participated in a placement a while ago, but you're trading at 30 cents today. Like, where's the selling pressure coming from? Is it misunderstood drill results, or what's the situation like in the share price there?
No, look, I think the drill results were very clear. Certainly all the investors that we've spoken to and all the funds understood the drill results very well, understand what our plan is. We seem to have a large seller that's been exiting for the last week. We don't know who the seller is. It's been under anonymous. Around about 2 million shares that have exited out of there. We've been contacting everyone to find who it is because we've got buyers for the blocks. For some reason, they just don't want to know who it is. So the volume's starting to come off. So we're expecting that their exit will be finished soon, and we can start back on our upward march. Until last week, we were pretty well on the same trajectory that we were prior to COVID. So we expect that we'll get back to that and continue our march back up to where we were.
No. Okay, fantastic. Let's go back to the projects before we start talking about capital market side. So Bralorne, you're doing a dewatering study, so you got some news coming out in that regard, in terms of cost and drilling underground. Like you hinted at it, but do you have some more details for us on that?
Yeah, so we've just completed the dewatering study, and we're looking at when we're going to kick that off. We have to balance that out with how much inflow there is from the spring melt. So we expect in around about a month to 6 weeks that we'll be able to initiate that dewatering study. It's come back very positive, and also very positive on what equipment we need to complete the watering study. We don't have to add any extra equipment. We can use the water treatment facility that we already have in place under the existing permit. So we're very happy with that. We don't have to do any permit amendment to be able to initiate that. Our initial estimate is that we can dewater down to the 500 metres from surface in approximately 90 days. So we're very keen to kick that off, and when the spring melt has abated, we'll certainly be kicking that off and looking at getting access there to underground.
Fantastic. So what's the regional plan with Bralorne? You're adding a lot of projects around it. I've seen you, it seemed like in March and April, you added a project, and that's a misconception, almost every week, but you've been adding land to it. So what's the regional plan here?
So we've basically been targeting any properties that we can acquire on the suture zone that Bralorne's hosted on. So far, we've taken the land position from 4,200 hectares up to I think 11,700. So we've made some pretty good acquisitions there. A lot of them have existing vein mineral occurrences on them. The last one directly to the north of us actually had a resource on it and has some quite significant veins. So really what we're looking to do is consolidating that whole belt, and then we'll look to a greenfields program around that with Bralorne as the centre, and focus on anything that can really define ounces that can be easily truckable to a Bralorne central processing facility.
Okay, interesting. Okay, that's years and years down the road. So first, I think we need to define some more resource and ounces here.
Yes.
So BC is opening up in general. Like I just got an email today that the preschool is opening for my son again, so which I'm extremely excited about. All right, it's going to be June 1st, but in terms of like BC has always been open really, and I hear that West Haven did a voluntary shutdown as well, but they're ready to go any day now as well, like at Spences Ridge. Like what are your plans over there at Spences Ridge, and do you think you'll go in there earlier this year than maybe at Bralorne?
No, it'll be a little bit later. So we're probably kicking off at Bralorne towards the end of this month, and we're scheduled to start in Spences Bridge on the 15th, and we're just coordinating our team right now, around about 22 geologists again this year. So we had a delayed start. We were planning to kick off on the 1st of May, so we've got about 6 weeks delayed start. But the program remains the same there, large-scale stream sediment program. So we will be completing our stream sediment program this year is the plan, and initiating soil programs and some geophysics on 4 to 5 drill projects. We're currently permitting 4 drill targets, and the aim will be to get that permitting done. The permitting timeline didn't stop at all. We just continued with that despite COVID, and we hope by autumn, by fall this year, to be drilling the first of those projects, and then continue to drill the other 3 throughout the winter, this year and early next year.
What's your exploration budget in general? I think you raised $13 million earlier this year, Canadian. So what is
Yes.
your exploration budget? And I'm keeping in mind you got the Osisco team behind you, so bigger is better, right? What are you doing?
So we've got a little bit over 20 million in cash at the moment. Our drilling at Bralorne has always been broken into two stages consisting of 4 phases. We've completed phase 1 now, which is about 3,000 meters. We'll be completing that first stage, which is an additional 8,000 meters. And then, depending on the outcome of the dewatering, we're looking at balancing how much drilling we do from surface and how much we do from underground. So our total budget for Bralorne, we're looking at around about $8 million this year. And with a reduced start to Spences Bridge, we're just evaluating our budgets now into what that will be. But I think we're still on track to spend about $3.5 million there at Spences Bridge and Greenfields Regional.
Wow, that's still a hefty package there. It's probably one of the bigger programs still in Canada. So at least right now. So tough to compete with Windfall, but the 25 drill rigs they got up there is just impossible to compete with. So let's talk a bit about the capital market side for a minute. You said you had one of the shareholders exiting, but you still have a very strong institutional base, and despite being listed on the CSE, right? I'm going to take away one of the questions we got on Twitter, because I have the same one, is when are you actually listing on the TSX? That has been announced for a while, and I'm assuming Corona had or the coronavirus had part of the delay. It was part reason of the delay here. Maybe you can give us an update on that and what the institutionals are saying about the CSE as well.
Yeah, so look, I'll answer that, Kai, in 2 parts. You are right. We have had some delays because of COVID, but that's the way it is. We just got to continue around and work on it. The plan hasn't changed whatsoever. We have a completed 43-101, which has been submitted to the TSX, to the regulators. We had some feedback from that. We've just corrected that feedback, and we're resubmitting it to them. We'll be submitting the Form 2 probably this week, and then are waiting for feedback from the TSX. So I guess the answer is that the uplist, assuming all goes well and they approve, is imminent within the next couple of weeks.
No, fantastic. Okay.
Regarding the CSE, unfortunately, the institutions aren't terribly happy with the CSE. We combat that because we've got quite significant volume. You would have noticed that we average but between 350 and 500,000 shares traded a day. So that abates some of that concern about the CSE, because we are one of the highest volume traders on the CSE. We are committed to our TSX upgrade, and hopefully we'll be doing that very soon. It'll certainly make our 40% or so of institutional shareholders much happier when we're up there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, the presentation mentions 38% institutional, and from what I know, is like institutions don't like to buy on the CSE. Do you have more buying? It's tough to answer that question, but have institutions indicated interest, like once you're on the TSX, to maybe support the company more, or have you been offered more money once you do the uplisting, like in terms of a bought deal or a flow through bought deal or something like that? Have you been getting calls like that?
Yes, we do, particularly out of the European community. Most of the European investors won't invest at all on the CSE. And we also see the same reflected in the US. We're on the QB there, and we keep getting halfway through the 25-cent US condition to jump up to the QX, which brings in a lot more shareholders. And until last week, we were about halfway through the process there. So I think our pathways going the right way, that we're moving to the TSX, which opens up a lot more larger investors, opens up a lot more European investors, and also the step up to the QX from the QB in the US, that opens up a lot more funds and investors who aren't comfortable on the CSE.
Yeah, interesting. Like, because the CSE is more of the cannabis and esports and gaming exchange for some reason. So that's the niche they went to, which is fine, but it's just not it really seems to be a mining exchange. So let's switch over to Twitter.
No,
We got quite a few questions in that regard, or not just because of the CSE, but some questions for you as well, and we're just going to go through them. People can see the questions; they're all just here. #AskTSK. We're going to answer a couple of those in the next 5 minutes. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to post them, and we'll go through them. And the Junior Explorer is asking, who else is drilling near Bralorne, and where in relationship are they to your current drill program?
There's only one company that drilled in the last year. There's nobody drilling currently. There's one group to the southeast of us, an Australian company called Blackstone Minerals that drilled the Little Gem project last year. I believe they had some plans to do some more drilling at the Little Gem this year, but they're mainly focused on a cobalt development program in Vietnam and drilling out that project and taking it to feasibility. So I believe from their CEO that their Canadian project has become a non-core asset, but they may still drill this year to alleviate some of their assessment requirements. Okay. Aside from that, no, I don't know of any companies drilling close to the Bralorne camp.
Okay. Are you going to be buying Blackstone's project?
I don't know.
I don't. I'm just poking the bear, see what comes out, right?
It isn't a deposit type that's analogous to Bralorne, Little Gem. So it isn't front and center for our acquisition strategy. We're looking specifically for orogenic or mesothermal vein systems. Their system was predominantly a cobalt system, hence why they were exploring for it. So it isn't something that's at the height of our priority list, even though it has some gold, some interesting gold intercepts. It isn't the deposit type that we're really focused on.
Okay, no, fair enough. Sorry, I didn't mean to spook you with that question. I was just like, as a follow up to just poking you. We got another question coming. It didn't come in directly, it came in via private message, but it seems like some US subscribers have had difficulty buying the stock via the CSE. So getting the uplisting to the OTCQX that you mentioned is a vital step for you, right? And when can you apply for it, for the uplisting? Can you give us some more detail on that?
Yes, certainly. So it's an automatic upgrade, if you like, once you've met certain conditions. The primary one is that you've traded above 25 cents US for more than 30 trading days. So we've been very close to that, twice. The first time was when we hit 65 cents. We were above, I think, for 25 days. So we just missed out when the COVID crisis came. And just recently, this last week, we were 13 days through the process. So I think it's more or less a formality. We just got to get back trading up around our usual levels, and we'll pass that. Obviously, moving into the TSX will allow a lot more US investors to be able to come in directly. A lot more brokerage houses in the US will purchase and support companies on the TSX.
And sorry, I forgot to ask that because I know it, but it's going to be Bigport TSX and not Venture, right?
Absolutely, yes. So we meet all the criteria to make it to the main board, and we think it's the best way to go. We want to put the right exchange platform behind our company, and we really believe that we're building something sizable here. So we want to make sure we have the correct infrastructure in place to do that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So that's why I figured I'd just drill down on that a little more, because for me it was obvious, but I just wanted some clarity on that. James Quantz is asking on Twitter, where's permitting for the properties outside of Bralorne, and when will any of these targets get drilled this year? If so, how many?
Our plan for this year is to drill 4 targets in the Spences Bridge region, initiating the first one sometime in May, so probably October this year. Our permitting timeline, so we're preparing the notice of work for all 4 of those projects, and we expect to have the first one permitted probably by September. in line with that drill program. So we've given ourselves a fair bit of fat. We've been socialising this, or pre-socialising, with our First Nation partners in the area, so we can have our plan well socialised prior to submitting it to notice of work stage to the government. So that's what we're expecting, and the plan is to basically take our phase 1 and phase 2 geologists as the field season's being reduced, as days are getting shorter, and roll those geologists into the drill programs and drill these projects in serial. So one after the other coming through winter. So that's really our plan. I hope that we can drill 1 to 2 this calendar year, and then drill the other 2 later on in the year. We're doing some final mapping and field work early in the season, so we can have those programs ready to go. The first one that we'll probably drill is actually outside of the Spences Bridge area. It's the Golden Hornet, which was an option acquisition earlier this year. So we're actually probably going to drill it first because it's the closest to being drill ready.
Fantastic. Okay, no, I think that was a very extensive answer. So we're sort of hitting our time limit here. We try to shoot for 25 to 27 minutes, and it'd be great to give us a bit of a just an outlook for the next 3 to 6 months for the company. For the company, like what can investors expect in terms of news flow? The obvious one, I think, is the TSX uplisting. We just talked about that at length. But what else? Like just put it in a bit of a time context for us before we end our conversation here.
Absolutely, Kai. So the main milestones that we'll be hitting, first, initiating drilling again at Bralorne. So that'll be within the next couple of weeks. Pretty soon after that, well, perhaps before that, we'll have hole 2 and 3 coming out. There was only 1 vein intercept in hole 2 and 3, but still interesting results that we're expecting. 3 and 4. Hole 5 will be coming out quite soon after drilling. We've got some very good intercepts in hole 5, so we're very excited about that. And then basically we'll be completing that 11,000 drill meters program from surface, basically running through to the middle of the year. The plan is by the middle of the year that we've initiated our dewatering, and we've reviewed the geomechanics of the underground, and hopefully by the second half of next year we can actually have rigs underground and start to be drilling more aggressively from underground, and complete as much drilling as we can there from underground. On Spences Bridge, we'll be completing as much of our phase 1 and phase 2 as we can. You know, we've got a lot of follow up there. We've got 100 anomalies that we've got to follow up. We've currently got 8 drill targets in Spences Bridge, 2 outside that we need to approve up to drill phase. Continuing our permitting, getting the drill rigs on the ground. There should be heaps of news for the rest of the year coming out from drill results and from our mine operations.
No, fantastic. That's an insane news flow that's coming up there. It's time for you to get back on a plane.
Absolutely. Yeah, ready to go.
No, great. Terry, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for getting up early for this interview. Really appreciate it. Please stay safe out there, and make sure you come back in one piece.
Thank you very much, Kai, and I hope all the viewers and listeners can keep safe and well.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Lots of questions asked. Make sure you follow us here on Twitter. Hit the little bell to subscribe to our channel here. That way you get alerted when we go live with another video. And also subscribe to YouTube and our Spotify channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe.